Welcome to Ben Reviewed. My name is Ben. Today I'm going to be making a video on Film 2700, which is Intro to Video Games. Film 2700 filled one of the 4 prerequisite classes for my major. When I first started the EAE program, there was only an art route and an engineering route. So I was going down the engineering route because I knew that I wasn't that great at art. So one of the classes that was needed was Film 2700, Intro to Video Games. Luckily, after I took that class, I found out that there was a middle ground degree that was coming out, which is where I am going into now. So they allowed us to transition a little easier, and this is counting as an EAE 1010 credit. So essentially, this may or may not work for you, but it's great to know because it's Intro to Video Games and it's very similar to EAE 1010. On the U of U website, Film 2700 is described as History and Culture Impact of Interactive Video Games and Virtual Worlds. Explore and discover the socio-cultural influences of the ever-expanding presence of interactive entertainment, evolution of computer and video game design from its beginnings to the present, storytelling, strategy, simulation, technology, 3D first-person games, cultural, business, and technical perspectives explored. So just like it says, Film 2700 is essentially the history of video games. It's a very easy class, and if you want to play video games and write about them, this is the class for you. I want to start by saying that Matthew Anderson is who taught our class. On ratemyprofessor.com he has a 3.5, but it doesn't hold a lot of weight because there's only 3 people who have actually reviewed him on there. This is now my second class with Matthew as a professor, the second class being EAE 1050, and the only differentiations I can say is the grading was a little bit different between the 2 courses. Film 2700 is a easier class than EAE 1050, and EAE 1050 was definitely graded a little bit harder than Film 2700. And by looking at ratemyprofessor.com, it's clear to me that the bad review that was given gave him a 1 overall in EAE 1050. The other 2 held his score up higher, as they were both Film 2700 as it turns out. The best way that I can summarize Film 2700 would be to say that it's essentially a timeline of video games and the genres and how they evolved over time. Everything from text adventures to modern day rhythm and music games are included. The weekly workload that we were given essentially consisted of the timeline or the genre that we were focusing in on that week. So, for example, I played Zork when we talked about text adventures. The next week we talked about the golden age of the arcade, and I played games like Pac-Man and Galaga and all those awesome arcade games, and the assignment actually had us go to an arcade and experience as if we were back in the golden age, which was actually kind of insightful and cool to, go to our nickelcade and put it in a nickel and actually play a game. Most of the homework that we were given was to just write about what we were doing 30 minutes into the game, what we were doing 60 minutes into the game, 90 minutes, and 120. And then we had to write a 1-page paper on how it related to class and what we thought about it and what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, I essentially played Zork, Mega Man, Sanitarium, Mortal Kombat 10, Earthbound, Thumper. It was just all over the place, but it was great because I was able to play video games and specific games at that and write about them, so really the workload wasn't hard at all. There were a couple papers that we had to write. Neither one was really crazy at all. The first of the 2 papers was a societal reaction to video games, so I wrote a 2-page paper about the crazy happenings when Overwatch came in and they over-sexualized Tracer with her looking over the back picture. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. If you haven't, just Google it, you'll find it. I just wrote about it. I didn't really take a side, I just wrote the facts, and 2 pages is really not that hard to write. So the second of 2 papers was a 5 to 6 page game critique paper where we had to take a critical lens and really focus on a video game. I chose to write my paper on BioShock Infinite and how it's really a narration of what would happen with no separation between church and state. I found it interesting that how regular gamers usually just go through a campaign or single player experience and you kind of just run through a lot of things. You don't focus in on the details. But when I went back and played BioShock Infinite, it was interesting to listen to the lyrics of the songs, the hymns that they were singing as you're going into the city, the writing on the wall, all the different things that kind of make the game the game. When you look at it critically, you really start to peel back the pieces of the onion, if I were Shrek, and put it all together. The final, however, is probably the best part of the class. You have to create a game document presentation. So I created a InDesign document that fully fleshed out this game that I had to come up with all the mechanics, the control schemes, the audio, the explanation, the narrative, and it was really in-depth. And the great thing about this is through the EAE program, you own all of your rights to your ideas, essentially. A lot of schools that you go to don't allow that, and you can't use your ideas moving forward. But the great thing here is the ideas and the documents that you come up with, you can use throughout all the EAE program. You can build your own game, or later after you leave, you can build your own game and continue to maintain those rights. It definitely took up the most time out of all of the assignments, but I think it took up the most time because I actually really cared about it. And I remember talking about it with some friends saying, like, this was actually worthwhile. It was something that I enjoyed. It was something that I didn't just want to BS to get through it. And I did get an A, but I put in a lot of time with it. My tips for this class would be to just do the work, sit down, and it's really not that hard to pop in a video game. If it's something that's emulated, you can easily go online and play games like Mega Man. It's not too hard of a ask to really sit down and play these games. So if I have any tips, it's just do the work, go to class, learn something new. A lot of these games were probably made before you were even born, but it's always interesting to see the history and see where games came from. Another tip that I have that is very, very important is please don't be that person who raises your hand every 2 to 3 minutes to blurt out something about a game that nobody's ever heard of, to try and act like you're superior to everybody. I had this girl in my class who every time she wanted to say something, she never rose her hand. So he never called on her, but she just blurted out. And we're sitting in a class of at least 100 people or so, and it was the most nerve-wracking and annoying thing. So just let the teacher teach the class. That's all I ask you, because please just don't be that person. I guess that's not even in just this class in particular. It is in every class. Just don't be that person. One thing that I wanted to really stress about this was the grades in this class. The grading is super easy and fair. I just really want to stress, play the games, do the work. He'll understand that, he'll know that, his TAs will know that, and I had no problem getting an A. I honestly think I was way above the percentage of an A in the class. So just do the work and play the games, enjoy the games, put an honest effort into it, and you guys will do just fine. So yeah, that's Film 2700, Intro to Video Games. Really not too hard of a class, really easy to summarize. If you enjoy video games, this is going to be a class for you, even if it's just an elective. It's an awesome thing to learn about anyways. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. If you have any questions, make sure to comment for sure. I'll get back to you ASAP. So until next time, this has been Ben Reviewed, and my name is Ben. Have a great day.